Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out today on the last day of Microsoft Ignites. Today, we're going to be talking about video interop. And the title of the session is a little bit different than what was in the agenda because we had to lock the title before some exciting news could be put into it. And that addition is that Pexip is also here with us to talk a little bit about their on-premise video interop solution. So today we've got from Microsoft, myself, I'm Doug Anderson. I'm a program manager in the partner engineering team in Skype for Business and Teams. And I also have with me my colleague Srividya. We have Adam Jacobs from Polycom and Marius Nielsen from Pexip. So today, what we want to do is spend some time talking to you about the new certifications for the Pexip and the Polycom video interop solutions, one which is focused on interop with Microsoft Skype for Business Online, and the other which is focused with Skype for Business on-premise solution. We're also going to tell you a little bit about the updates in the certification, some of the new features and benefits that we've included in the collaboration with our partners, and a sneak peek at how we're going to evolve video interop for Microsoft Teams moving forward. So I'm assuming everyone here is familiar with VTCs and why do we care about video interop, but just in case you aren't, a lot of companies have invested heavily in high-end video telepresence systems, and many of these systems do not work natively with Skype for Business. And you want to be able to use them, so we need a translator system, which is a video interop solution, like the ones from Pexip and Polycom. They allow you to connect those systems directly to your Skype for Business meetings. So when you're trying to use these video teleconference systems, what are some of the problems that customers have? Well, we find that not everyone knows the meeting room details. I don't know if John is using a Cisco room or a Polycom telepresence room. And if I don't know the specifics, it might be difficult to manually add them. We want to make sure that inviting those rooms is something that's easy and seamless. Also, some of these systems, especially the older ones, have difficult user interface to get into SIP-based meetings or meetings with a SIP join URI like the Skype for Business meetings. So we want to make sure that they are easy to join into. And we want to make sure that when you're in the meeting, the experience is as native Skype for Business experience as possible. So those are a few of the things that we've worked on with our partners to achieve. First, let me start about the in-meeting experience. You may be familiar with the term VMR, or virtual meeting room. A lot of the earlier video interop solutions focused on a VMR mode, and that's fine if most of the endpoints are video teleconference systems. But if you want to really participate in Skype for Business meetings and be a full-fledged first-class citizen in the Skype for Business meetings, a VMR mode can be difficult. What a VMR mode means is basically that all of the endpoints dial directly in to a MCU hosted by the video interop provider. And that MCU then joins into Skype for Business, and it has one entry in the roster. That means that if, for example, I wanted to mute the roster or eject just one of the endpoints, I couldn't do it. And so we've worked with our partners Polycom and Pexip to make sure that their solutions operate in what we call a gateway mode. And that allows each individual VTC to be a first-class citizen in the Skype for Business meeting. And it allows both sides to kind of experience their native experience. So the VTC will show up directly in the roster with its own friendly name, it's controllable, et cetera. Oops, wrong one. So this slide's a lot of words, and I don't mean to talk through every word on this slide. This slide is really designed to capture the fact that we've worked closely with Polycom and Pexip over the last year. We've certified one solution from each of them for on-premise and for online use. The Polycom Real Connect for Office 365 is the brand name for their solution. This is a service hosted by Polycom in the Azure cloud. It's a multi-tenant service, so as a customer, the customer just needs to select Polycom and sign up with them, and Polycom handles the day-to-day operations. The second option is Pexip's Infinity Fusion, which is an on-premise solution that customers can purchase and deploy in their data centers, wherever those may be, and they can manage them directly. And both of our partners will talk to you with a little bit more specifics about their solutions. The other thing that I wanted to highlight on this slide is that you may, if you've been following this space for a while, you may know that we had an earlier certification program for Link back in the Link 2010 and 2013 timeframe. And we've gone above and beyond what that certification did. We've done a few things such as enhance them to support HD video and video-based screen sharing for high-quality content. We've also made sure that these are higher quality programs by having a customer tab with actual real customer usage prior to the certification. And there's a few other updates which I think we'll talk to in the specific sections for Polycom and PEXIP, such as manageability, et cetera. So with that, I'd like to introduce to the stage Adam Jacobs from Polycom, who will talk to you about the Office 365 Real Connect. Thanks, Adam.
Should turn this on, really. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see so many people here after a party. Okay. So I'm going to talk, as Doug mentioned, a bit about Real Connect for Office 365. As Doug alluded to earlier, it is a cloud service. It is a multi-tenanted solution. It's managed by Polycom. And what that basically means is that from your perspective, you don't have to worry about version control of different components and updating it. We're updating it regularly, and we're deploying fixes a lot quicker in that environment than we would, say, with an on-premises solution. It's hosted in Azure, which for us is great because it means that the network latency between us and Skype for Business Online is extremely minimal. And also we've integrated with the Office 365 tenant admin experience as well. And I'm going to walk through that in a moment and show you how you license users. We're supporting a wide range of different devices. This is something that we do already today. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the other thing that we wanted to make sure of is that we also can support the ability to dial directly into meetings, IVRs as well, and also the ability just to click the existing calendar on the endpoint just to join straight into the meeting. Content is extremely important to us as well, so we have a bi-directional content sharing that we've introduced. We've also have support for the latest content protocols that Microsoft have, video-based screen sharing, including the RDP content sharing also. So from an end user perspective, there's a workflow to get these meetings set up and running. The first thing that a user will do is they'll go into Outlook and they'll schedule their Skype for Business meetings. And in the case of this service, we did a lot of work with Microsoft on ensuring that the native Skype for Business add-in populates the appropriate meeting coordinates for a VTC user to dial into the meeting. And that only appears if the user is licensed for the service. Now, once they've sent that meeting invite out to the various endpoints that are participating, there's obviously a different type of join experience depending on the endpoint. You know, if it's a Skype room system, then obviously the native calendar is going to be used. If it's a Polycom or a Cisco VTC, again, we can integrate with the calendar and ensure that click-to-join experience is available. And then last but not least, once you're in the meeting, the experience is also extremely native to the type of endpoint you're using. So if you're using a Skype for Business client, you're going to see content in the content stage. You're going to see the roster, as Doug mentioned earlier, and you're also going to see the gallery view experience if you choose to. And then from a VTC perspective, you can either see on a single screen, if you've got a single screen, your content, your video, or if you've got a dual screen, you can see content on one screen and then video on the other. So let's just touch on some of the prerequisites for this service. From an end user perspective or from the meeting organizer's view, they need to make sure that they are hosted in Skype for Business Online and Exchange Online, and that's an important fact. This is an all-up cloud solution, both from a Microsoft and a Polycom perspective. They also need to make sure that they have the right builds of Office 2016, And that's because a lot of work was done between Microsoft and Polycom to ensure that the scheduling experience was as simple and as native as possible. The end user obviously needs to have a supported endpoint or VTC. There is a link in the references which will basically show you a page where we update all the supported VTCs at this time. So that can be referred to later, but we have a wide range of different endpoints from Cisco, from Polycom, from Lifesize, Huawei, etc. And from a tenant admin standpoint, they need to establish, once they put in their license key, they need to establish a cloud solution provider relationship between their tenant, and this is the tenant where they're scheduling their meetings, and Polycom. And then last but not least, the VTC infrastructure of the customer needs to be configured to allow external calling. Because remember here, the VTCs themselves, they're dialing outside of the environment over the internet. So if they're not able to dial out today, then obviously that needs to be made available. So I'm now going to walk into a provisioning demo. Let me just switch screens here. Okay, so what we can see here is I've logged in as an admin, and I'm logged in into my admin portal here, and I've basically filtered on specific accounts here. And I'm going to focus on two accounts. I've got Adam01 and Adam02. These are the two accounts I'm going to focus on. And neither of these accounts, if I open them up here, are licensed for the service. And we can see that by clicking into the users. And you can see here I've got an E3 license, I've got phone system and audio conferencing. And if I go into my second user here, the same should be said. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to show you the two ways that you can license these users. And we've already added the license for this tenant. So let's go into PowerShell here. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. I've got my PowerShell commands ready to go. So first of all, I'm going to see that I've got my licenses loaded into this tenant. So if you look here, we have this line here. I'll just highlight that. We have the video interop license applied to this tenant. And I can see here that I've got 50 licenses, of which 12 have already been allocated to users. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to allocate 2 more licenses. So I'm going to go back to my commands here. And I am going to license my account. And that's my Adam01 account. So we're going to basically take that account and we're going to add a license from our video interop licenses. And once we've done that, we can then go and we can look at our user that's just been licensed again in PowerShell. And we're going to get back a whole load of information. But the important piece of information here is that we can see that one of our policies, let's have a look here, our cloud video interop policy for our user. Let's try that again. It might. Hold on. We have a delay. Let's just try that one last time, see if it updates. If not, I'll move on to my other user. So we'll come back to that user. That was the first way of licensing. Let's go into our other way. So we're going to do the licensing via the portal itself. So the other way we can do this is if we go in the portal and we edit our licenses, I can also toggle my licenses here as well. So again, we can see we've got 37 licenses available. I can turn it on. I can save it. And again, our licenses have been applied there. Let's go back into our PowerShell and see if we've got our other user updated. It does take a moment. Okay, there we go. So if we now look at our user, we can see, if you look at this line here, we have cloud video interop policy service allowed. And if we also scroll up even further, we will see that the cloud meeting policy, where are we? this one here, has modern scheduling enabled as well. So we now know that our user's been licensed, and if I go back into the portal, and the demo gods are with me, we should see, if I do a refresh here, there we go. We can now see that because we executed that in PowerShell, we have the licensing applied. Now, the other way to troubleshoot to see whether the policy has been applied correctly is if we go and we look at some of our logs, our Skype for Business client logs. So we're going to do that as well. So if I go into my cheat sheet here, I'm just going to open up Explorer. And this is my directory where my client logs are located. And here are some client logs I created earlier. And I'm going to open that up in Snooper. Okay, and what we're looking for here is we're looking for our online meetings link reference. And this is the inbound policy that gets applied to our user when it signs in. So it looks like we've got something in the logs. So if I scroll down, so here we can see via the logs that the online meetings link has been applied to our policy, and there's a specific URL also that we're using for scheduling. And that's not the same scheduling URL that would be used if we weren't licensed for this service. So I'm good to go. I can sign in with that user with the right version of Office, and I can schedule a video interop meeting. So let me cut back to my PowerPoint. There we go, got the right one. So we basically conducted a technology adoption program, or TAP, with Microsoft when we introduced this service. And one of the things that we got a lot of feedback around was when there are meetings where there are just VTCs in those meetings, and there's no Skype for Business participants, we need to somehow have a way of both admitting those endpoints and promoting them with presenter rights. And the reason why that's applicable here is because VTCs today join those meetings as anonymous guests. So one of the things that we've got on this slide here is another PowerShell configuration that you can execute that allows you to configure that as a meeting scheduler. So you can go in and you can adjust the menus to ensure that within that specific meeting, a VTC will be admitted through the lobby and also be promoted to presenter. One final note there, you do need to have a specific version of Office 2016 Click to Run. The minimum version is on this slide. So the other thing I'd like to talk through is the architecture that we chose for this service. It is a global service. We're still rolling it out to other regions. Right now we have 5 different instances globally deployed. And this example here is a real-world example. And basically, we've got 3 different regions. We've got our West Coast Azure instance, we've got South Central, and then we've got West Europe. In this example here, we have an endpoint in the West Coast that is dialing into the meeting. So we're dialing our dial string, in this case, manually. And what happens here is that we're going to use Azure Traffic Manager as a mechanism to route that endpoint to the right Azure instance that's closest. So we can see there in the SRV record lookup that our endpoint has been directed to that instance in the West Coast. Now, if, for example, we had some kind of Azure outage in that specific instance, then the Azure Traffic Manager will automatically redirect that endpoint to the next available Azure instance. So in this example here, in our West Coast endpoint is going to basically get redirected to the next nearest, which is, in this case, South Central. Another thing that we recently added is the ability to use the existing reporting mechanism within the Skype for Business admin portal. So you can go now into the session details, and you can filter specifically on Real Connect connected endpoints. And there's an agent string that you can use to filter there, and it will show you all the different VTCs that have dialed into Skype for Business conferences using our service. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Marius from Pexip.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Thank you. Good. So I will talk a little bit about the certified Skype for Business interop for Skype for Business Server on premises. And the Pexip solution is simply bridging the gap between all the different protocols supported in the Skype for Business clients in a Skype for Business meeting and in the VTC world. I'm not going to go through all the protocols in detail, but some of you will be familiar with some of them. In this session, or this segment, I will cover a little bit about the different workflows, a little bit about the deployment architectures and how to set it up, and we'll also have a small demo of troubleshooting and fault finding. So before we go there, I also wanted to highlight quickly also on the Pexip side, as Doug mentioned earlier, we did also run a TAP program this summer, where there were hundreds of H323 and SIP video conferencing endpoints dialing in to Skype meetings and doing point-to-point calls, etc., with all the major brands of video conferencing devices. So we had a lot of great feedback and a very good way for us as a partner and a provider to also verify that all the use cases in Skype meetings were covered when we went live with this summer. So looking a little bit at the workflows for Skype meetings. So when using Skype for Business Server on premises and scheduling a Skype meeting, you would use the normal New Skype Meeting button in Outlook. And there is no extra add-ons on the side for this one. Pexip would here use the conference ID, which is also used for PSTN, to make sure the video conferencing endpoint would be routed to the correct Skype meeting. To provide the information for the end users, this is typically done in the footer, which can be customized by the Skype for Business administrator. So in this case, I've chosen to edit the logo to also sort of promote a little bit extra the fact that you can join from a video conferencing endpoint. But this is, of course, something each administrator would choose how he would like this to be perceived. So going sort of into a high-level overview of what it looks like, all the Skype for Business clients, desktop, mobile, Surface Hubs, Skype Room systems would connect as they normally do to the Skype for Business front-end server by clicking just the normal join link. The VTC endpoints typically have two ways of joining. Either someone walks into the VTC room and dials the conference ID, or dials an IVR and then enters the conference ID. This will work both for internal and external VTC systems to your organization. The other approach would be drag and drop or add participant, where someone already in the Skype meeting would bring in a VTC endpoint they know the URI of. So I'm going to cover these flows in a little bit more detail. Starting with a dial in from the VTC, highlighted on the side here. So the VTC would simply either dial an IVR and enter the conference ID from the invite, or it could also dial the conference ID directly, depending on your call control and your rules set up there. In this case, the VTC will either route directly to Pexip or through its current call control. Pexip would resolve the meeting with the Skype for Business server and connect the VTC endpoint into the meeting. So this is the connection initiated from the VTC side. As an alternative, it's also possible, as I mentioned, to initiate from the Skype for Business client. Maybe you are in a Skype meeting and you want to bring in a VTC endpoint. Then you can just search for this VTC endpoint or find it in your contact list and simply drag it into the meeting or use the add participant option. So those are just two different ways to get a VTC endpoint into a Skype meeting. Also, another possibility, which is part of the Pexip Infinity solution, is also the ability to do point-to-point calls. Let's say that you're sitting at your desk, you were supposed to be in the meeting room, but you can't actually go there, and this didn't happen to be a Skype meeting. You can actually just search for that VTC, right-click, start video call, exactly the same way as you would do a point-to-point call between two Skype for Business clients. And you can also do it the other way around. If you're sitting in the VTC room and you would like to bring in an expert, maybe you ask him on chat, do you have a few minutes? And then you just search for him in the VTC directory and dial to that Skype for Business participant. And this, with the appropriate routing rules set up, will then be routed through Pexip, and Pexip will do all the protocol conversions. And for all of these scenarios, for meetings and point-to-point calls, Pexip also converts all the different presentation formats supported. So presenting your desktop in Skype for Business would be either video-based screen sharing, if you're using Skype for Business 2016 clients, or remote desktop protocol if you're using older clients. If you do present program, it would today be remote desktop protocol. And Pexip also supports the ability for a Skype user to click the present PowerPoint files. So Pexip would then support viewing this. This is then the still images from that PowerPoint. So currently annotations and animations in slides is not supported. However, the PowerPoint slides shared by a Skype user will be viewable for those in the VTC endpoint. So that's also a feature quite a lot of our customers have been asking for. So those were some of the user flows and how to initiate calls, join meetings. So then I wanted to show you a little bit about how the architecture would look like. So prior to any video conferencing integration with Skype for Business, this is typically two separate worlds. You have your Skype for Business world with a front-end server and a Skype for Business edge, and you have your video conferencing endpoints, maybe some external business-to-business connections, and your internal VTC endpoints that would typically be registered to a third-party call control, like Cisco VCS, Polycom DMA, etc. So to get started with Pexip, you would install this in your virtual environment and integrate it with the Skype server and your existing call control. So as a starting point, you don't need to replace any existing components. You put in Pexip, you integrate with Skype and your existing call control, and you can start to do all the calls in all the scenarios I just walked through. Depending on your topology and how your calls are being done, it is also possible to remove the existing call control and register directly to Pexip. Customers that more or less only do Skype meetings could be in a good position to simplify their architecture like this, but this is typically a design session we do with our customers to recommend how they set up their environment. So this is a setup showing a single site. So how about the multinational deployment with Skype for Business front-end servers spread all around the world? So here I have a setup with Americas, EMEA, and APAC. Exactly the same setup. You deploy Pexip Infinity with nodes in all the regions. They are all part of the same platform, and I'll show you in a second how to fault find one of these global platforms. You could here as well integrate with your regional call control systems that might already be in place, or you could also, depending again on your call flows, also choose to replace them in one region or in multiple regions, as Pexip also supports SIP and HTTP registration. So those are some of the sort of very, very high-level topologies for one site or for multiple sites. Finally, I also wanted to touch on one slide on the different deployment options, because when integrating with Skype for Business server on premises, what is important is the fact that Pexip Infinity will need to talk to the Skype front-end server. And in this case, Pexip is a virtual piece of software you put on your network where you have your virtual infrastructure. That could be in your Hyper-V or VMware environment in your own data center. It could be in your own tenant in Microsoft Azure. And it could also be a combination of the two, where you have some always-on capacity on premises and some extra capacity in Microsoft Azure. Or maybe in one region you have on-prem and another region you have Azure. But this would be then deployed by your IT admins in your Azure tenant. So that was a little bit of a high-level overview of the Pexip Infinity solution. And in the end, I'll show you a couple of small demos on how to do a little bit of fault finding. So I'll switch over to my other computer, and here we have a Skype for Business meeting. There is currently myself and one other Skype participant, and a participant from a Cisco VTC endpoint present in this call. And you can see he's represented with his own roster list entry. So going into the Pexip management interface, here we can see this gateway session. We can see all our servers and the actual load of those servers. In the Oslo data center, I happen to have 3 servers in a cluster. And here we can easily identify which server is currently handling the load of this session. I can hover over this session to see who are the participants in that session. I can also drill in to the session to see further how everyone is connected. So right now there is currently 2 participants in the Skype meeting. I can also see the address of the Skype server, so I know which front-end or edge server I'm connected through. And here we can see another Skype participant just joined on the Skype for Business side. I can also see packet loss information between Pexip and the VTC codec. So audio, video to and from the VTC to allow the admin to do simple fault finding to find out where there are potential issues. I can also drill down into this VTC session, and I can see currently the perceived call quality for this VTC has been perfect all along. I can scroll down and see some more details like the user agent, so I know what software version the VTC might be running. I can see the transmit resolution, so the resolution of the video stream Pexip is sending, in this case 1080p. In the other end as well, sending and receiving 1080p. The video codec, the audio codec, and also number of packets lost. And I could even drill in to the detailed call logs if I so desire. Because if you're doing an advanced fault finding session and you're a little bit into the deeper details, maybe you wanted to have a look at what video protocols or audio protocols did this VTC offer, or what payload types were offered. This is all available in the logs, which an admin can drill into from sort of the entire environment into a specific call, specific endpoint, and the logs for that specific endpoint. So this was the first demo. The second one we wanted to show as well was the fact that you might have multiple VTC endpoints. So here we are currently 3 Skype participants, and then we have another Cisco VTC connecting from Oslo. So now I have one C60 and one EX90 connected. You can see they're both represented, as Doug mentioned earlier today, with their individual roster list entry, and I have full control of removing, muting, locking video spotlight, and I also have support for all the features in the participant actions, like if I wanted to block all the attendee video or mute the audience or similar. And I'll show you one more thing in the management interface. So now I'm going to have a look at the uplink between the Pexip server and the Skype meeting. Because as some of you might know, in a Skype meeting, there are quite a lot of streams being switched back and forward. And the Skype for Business client is adapting based on the screen resolution, your computer, your bandwidth, to send whatever is necessary and avoid wasting a lot of bandwidth. So in this case, looking at the streams coming from Pexip to Skype, we're actually sending 3 different resolutions on behalf of this endpoint. This is not supported by the endpoint itself, but Pexip is sending those 3 streams because there are different Skype users asking for different resolutions. And Pexip is also receiving 1 high resolution and 3 lower resolutions, which we're actually presenting back to the VTC endpoint. So if we go in here and try to choose this VTC, and we go for lock video spotlight, this will actually change what streams are being requested. So if I'm going to refresh this page, you will now see that Pexip is actually not receiving any video streams on behalf of this endpoint, because this video endpoint is only transmitting as it's locked. So now we can see it's transmitting 2 different resolutions based on the sizes of the window for all the different Skype clients in this meeting. And of course, as soon as I go back and unlock the video spotlight, then all the streams will start to flow again based on what is requested by the VTC endpoint through Pexip or the different clients. So that was a little bit of a high-level overview of some fault finding of a Pexip platform and how to sort of drill into details and look for potential issues. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Sri to cover a little bit about the road ahead. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Marius. So that was 2 great demos you saw from Marius and a great demo from Polycom as well. So having said that, let's see what's coming next for us with video interop as well as our partners. You have seen the announcements earlier this week. It's been everywhere. We've been talking at it at our booth. So the key points with the announcements is that we do have a new Skype backend infrastructure that is cloud built and cloud born for enterprise grade voice, video, as well as meetings. This is the one that's powering our Microsoft Teams already. In addition, you also heard the announcements that Microsoft Teams is going to be evolving to become our core communications client for our Office 365 customers. So now let's take that back to what does that mean for the video interop solutions that we have. Also, you already have made investments in your existing VTCs. How are those investments going to be, how are you going to be able to use those investments with Microsoft Teams? Just a quick recap of that. We have the commercial cloud as well as we have our on-premises server. What we have with Polycom today enables us to do video interop for our Skype for Business Online, and what we have with Pexip today enables us to do video interop with Skype for Business On-Prem, and obviously we are working on the Teams platform here. What you do see here, and I do want to call out here, is the bottom line there that we do have a commitment to support our third-party VTC devices and solutions as we go forward, as we evolve our cloud story. So in order to support that, we have not 2, but 3 partners. We have Polycom, we have Pexip, and we also have BlueJeans. All 3 partners are in the room with us, so please feel free to ask questions, and we have 3 partners that can answer that for you. Now, if you're wondering, how are we enabling all of these new technologies and these new capabilities, let's look at that in a bit. We are evolving our Office 365 communication services platform that will enable you to do programmable voice and video. It gives direct access to media streams for audio, video, as well as sharing. This not only enables us to do scenarios like interop, but we also have other scenarios for IVR as well as recording that will be leveraging the same technology over here. Just a little bit about how we are actually leveraging the existing capabilities that our partners already have. Our partners already have a wealth of information and knowledge on how they have already built up their solutions. What I'm going to talk about in this slide is basically how are we actually enabling enabling teams as well as leveraging the wealth of information that they already have in using the existing technology. So in this case, we are actually having a partner solution that basically continues to use their own edge transcoding and protocol translations and everything, and their connection to the VTC leg more or less remains the same. On the other side, we are enabling the partner develop a Teams interop bot that is Azure based, that actually uses the stack I just talked about in the previous slide, which is basically our communication services SDK, which is provided by Microsoft to our partners. These together are able to communicate to the new Skype backend infrastructure. And therefore, we have the native integration that Microsoft is able to provide by using our own first-party SDKs that we are providing to our partners on one end, as well as we are also able to leverage what the partners have already built from a knowledge, infrastructure, and capabilities for connecting existing VTCs into their network already. So what next for you guys? Please sign up for trials. We have trials for Polycom as well as trials for PEXIP if you are interested in Skype for Business Online or on-prem at the moment. And please do visit the Skype catalog solutions. We have all the references in our references section. And again, I mentioned this earlier, I'm going to mention this again. I have all 3 partners in the room, so feel free to ask them questions, and we are here as well. So just a reference page over here for you guys to take back and use it as you see fit. And with that, I'm going to give it to Q&A. Absolutely.
Good morning.
The slides will be available and the recording will be available as well.
So I have a question for Polycom there. When you were showing the licensing model as it sits there, does that mean I have to anybody who is going to be somehow interacting with the 2 systems versus Skype for Business, I have to buy a license for? Is that what that's showing?
Sorry.
So if I do it, does that mean I have to license every one of my Skype for Business users if they're going to be involved in any kind of interop with the VTC?
Yes, so the licensing model with Real Connect for Office 365 is slightly different to what you'd have on premises. So you're licensing the users that are scheduling meetings. So that doesn't mean you have to license everyone. It means you need to license people.
Just the schedulers.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So any reason why you went that way as opposed to licensing the VTCs themselves?
Yes. I think the simple answer to that is that the licensing model online today really, so for example, if you look at something like dial-in PSTN conferencing, you're licensing people that want the ability to have PSTN dial-in conferencing. We basically wanted to make sure that we followed suit and we kept things in a very sort of similar vein from a licensing perspective as what Microsoft are doing today.
Okay. Oh, and who's the Blue Jeans person? Okay, you guys are already talking to my company, and what I want to do is I want to inject myself in that conversation. So can I do that for you?
Absolutely. We should sync up. My email is sean@bluejeans.com as well,
Okay.
so it's easy, SEAN, and let's sync up after this session.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Sure.
One of the reasons that people would look at using the video interop services would be to try and come up with a common control plane. And my question is around call mission control and also scheduling of conferences to make video conferences usable. A lot of legacy VTC units like to have, you want to be able to go to that room and make sure that that conference is going to go off in Skype for Business. You have no guarantee that that video conference is going to go off unless you have CAC set aside for that specific VTC. How do you take care of that in these different scenarios?
Shall I have a stab at it? Shall I have a stab? So I mean, on premises, obviously you can use CAC. Right, so, and when Doug pulled up the slide earlier, there was a mention of call of mission control support. Obviously online, there isn't call of mission control. That doesn't exist today. There is some options for connectivity, maybe around, I don't know, ExpressRoute perhaps, but it's, yeah, other than that, it's, you're using the internet. I mean, when I spoke earlier about the making use of local Azure instances, that was one of the things that we made a decision around to make sure that endpoints are routed to the nearest path so that they're not going, too many hops across the internet.
Correct. Okay.
Could also cover that from a lot of enterprise on-prem customers would typically dedicate a portion of their network for VTC calls.
Right.
But then the CAC would be handled by typically the traditional VTC infrastructure if you have such a large environment. And these are the scenarios, at least for us, where I would typically recommend to keep that environment, because you might have sort of only allowing 5 calls from this region into other regions, etc. So those are some of the scenarios where you definitely would like to keep that existing VTC infrastructure, but just make sure you make that infrastructure aware of the path to on-prem, the PEXIP server, which will then be the gateway into the Skype meeting.
So I just have a couple things that I just like clarification on. Polycom, when you were presenting, you mentioned VTC meetings. If we're talking Skype for Business, when would it be a VTC meeting?
So what I was referring to is a scenario whereby you schedule a Skype meeting and VTCs join that meeting, and there were no Skype for Business participants that happened to join in that case. So it's basically still a Skype meeting, but the participants just happen to be VTCs only.
So how would they schedule that meeting without it being done by someone who is a Skype user?
You want to go ahead, Doug?
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is all a Skype-centric solution. Let's start with that. And the design with this was to make meetings seamless for the Skype users regardless of what the endpoint is. So if the endpoint is a Skype client, great, well, they schedule as normal. If the endpoint is a Skype room system, great, they schedule as normal. If the endpoint is a VTC, they still schedule as normal. And we've removed that complexity of having to know what the room is. You just send it out, and as long as the meeting recipient is able to receive a text-based email, because in the case of the online meeting, the join information is there in plain text, and I could write it down on paper if I wanted to. I could also integrate it with a one-touch dial solution to make it even easier to join if I don't want to type in that number.
Right. So just for clarification, that scheduling of the meeting is done by that VTC?
No,
it's done the Outlook client.
That's correct. The scheduling is done by the Outlook client. So the Skype for Business user has Exchange and Skype for Business Online. They go into their Outlook client, schedule the meeting as a Skype for Business meeting. The meeting is homed on a Skype for Business MCU. So this is homed on Skype for Business Online. And that's where all the video mixing or video switching and audio mixing occurs. The VTC simply joins in as a call leg through the Polycom solution.
Okay. Not to be difficult, but that is a Skype meeting that VTCs are just joining, and no one from their Skype client is joined. So you want that VTC to act as though it is a Skype client.
That's correct. So what we're really trying to, with that section that Adam was talking about, what we're trying to solve for is we're going to have some meetings that it's one or more Skype for Business clients joining into the meeting alongside one or more VTCs. And that works fine. The Skype for Business participants can can manage the lobby and promote to presenter as necessary. But there are some scenarios where, let's say it's the executive to executive call, and they don't want anybody else in the call. And it's really just those 2 executive briefing rooms that are calling. In that case, we didn't want to require there to be somebody else that joins via the Skype client just to, be the concierge, if you will. So that's why we wanted to expose that configuration setting to let the VTCs automatically bypass the lobby and be the presenters.
Yeah, hi. I have a Skype for Business. Was he first? Or? No, okay.
You've started.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
We'll get you next.
Yeah, sorry. I have a Skype for Business server on-prem, and I'm looking forward to use Rail Connect. Tell us about hybrid solutions. Because I'm going to use on-prem, and I'm trying to find a way how I can use hybrid solution to to use Rail Connect?
I'll start, and then I will let both of you guys answer. Officially today, from a Skype for Business approved and qualified point of view, PEXIP is the only Skype for Business on-premise solution. Polycom is approved as an online solution. And Polycom is working towards something, and I think they're going to be taking customer trials for a beta or technology adoption program soon. I'll let Adam just speak to that. The difference between the two solutions, and then I'll let them hash it out in the specifics, is that the Polycom hybrid solution leverages the Azure online service that Polycom hosts, whereas the PEXIP solution for Skype for Business on-premise is a customer-managed and customer-maintained on-premise solution. And then
I guess the question is really, do you want the media to stay on local on your network, which also means you own the servers or the VMs, then you go with PEXIP. If you don't want to touch any VMs at all, that is when you talk to Adam about the service they are working on, right?
Yeah, so I mean, just to add to that, I mean, when we launched the Rail Connect for Office 365 service, we, one of the first things that customers said was, well, hey, I'm still on-prem, right? So how can we use this? So we, as Doug mentioned, we are working on a TAP, a beta. We are looking to launch something like that, and there was some marketing around this event, but we're, you know, if there are people that are interested in the trial, they can reach out to me, Adam Jacobs at polycom.com. Yeah, we are looking to also certify that in a later time frame.
Yeah, I saw some slides in your Polycom booth that they were talking about hybrid, and they said end of the year, this year.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Do any of these support WebRTC?
Yeah. So for PEXIP Infinity, it supports WebRTC for Chrome and Firefox. It supports ORTC for Edge. It supports fallback to Flash for Internet Explorer. And we're now also about to add WebRTC for Apple Safari in macOS High Sierra. So regardless of what client you're using, the client doesn't need to download anything in addition. This is typically not something we talk about by default because this is about bridging VTCs into Skype. But in some use cases, especially with banks and other customers, they have a user and he only joins once, right? And then you really want that to go very quickly. So that's something we can do as well.
Thank you.
This one over there.
Hi, good morning. So our organization have a combination of a lot of Cisco investments into in our company. And we use CManage, which is a WebEx integration with telepresence heavily. And we are looking into Skype for Business now. And with the Teams announcement, it's going to be a little, combination. So the question is there a way that we can have the WebEx integrated telepresence meetings integrate with the Skype room systems as well as the Skype client? Means can we bring in the WebEx users also into this mix without having a lot of changes done? This question is for the Polycom or,
Can we confirm we heard the question correctly? I didn't hear it exactly. So the question, if I got it, was can you have WebEx clients dial into a Skype for Business hosted meeting using the video interop solution?
Yes.
Was that accurate?
Yeah.
So both of these guys have a list of supported endpoints that's on their on the references page, and I'll let them talk to the specifics of supported endpoints.
So in general, you don't necessarily have a WebEx endpoint, right? You're talking about the WebEx conference.
WebEx clients, people joining from their PCs with WebEx.
Yeah. So when you join from your PC with WebEx, you join to a WebEx meeting. And what you're looking for here is to join a Skype meeting. And I wouldn't typically recommend to bridge two meetings like that, because then you will have two different roster lists and a cascade link between, which would only get you into trouble. There are technical ways to dial a Skype client into such a meeting, but even because it's possible technically, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to do it, because it's not going to give a very good user experience. So I would actually recommend to shift the focus over to use Skype meetings, because those WebEx clients could just as well use a Skype client or a Skype guest client.
Okay. And I'll add to that. One of the common themes of what we've done with these two partners and with BlueJeans in the future is to try to make the video interop solutions be more Skype native, to help all of the Skype endpoints that are joining a meeting have a full, rich experience when they interop with partners. And that was the whole point of what I discussed about the gateway mode as opposed to the old VMR mode. And so one of the things you're going to notice when you see the the approved supported devices list for both of these partners is it focuses heavily on video teleconference endpoints. Because if it's a Skype native capable endpoint, such as a PC or a mobile phone, then we would obviously recommend that the user uses the native Skype client that's available on those endpoints. Okay. I don't know if you had anything else to add.
I agree.
Yeah. I come from a company that's using Cisco Jabber and WebEx. We recently started using Teams, and we have a lot of Cisco endpoints in our office. Going forward with the roadmap, how can Pexip or Polycom come into a situation where a company doesn't have any Skype for Business infrastructure at all, but is simply focusing on Teams? Is there any timeline on video interrupts for that kind of scenario?
So what your question is what is the timeline for basically the third box in Sri's slide deck?
Yeah.
We don't have a calendar month roadmap that we're prepared to speak to at this session, but what I would say is stay tuned. When we do get ready to take customers on for a TAPS or beta, depending on how you call it, we usually call it TAP, for Technology Adoption Program. When we get ready to take customers on for TAP for any of these three partners, we'll be sending out that announcement so that you can take advantage of it.
Thank you.
And if your company is interested and you proactively want to reach out to us, you can definitely send Doug or myself an email saying I'm interested in signing up for TAP, and we're happy to.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. I just would like to continue a question from the gentleman next to wall. I also on-prem Skype for Business customer, but my Exchange users already online. So we have Azure Active Directory. My 80 HDX endpoint, can I use your Real Connect in this situation when my customer already in Office 365, but I am Skype for Business on-prem?
Yeah, so the hybrid solution that we touched on earlier, that would support that topology, yes.
Will support, or I can join already to try?
Once it's launched, it will be supported.
So
when
specifically, there's the launch solution that you can buy today from Polycom. And that one does require Skype for Business online and Exchange online. But the hybrid solution that Adam's talking about is coming soon in a trial. Right. Sorry.
Hey, so one question for Polycom. If we have in the past, we had some equipments like Centro, and we said, let's register these devices directly to Skype for Business and try to use them as a Skype endpoint. Yeah. So the interop is a different proposal, right? We keep registering everything in the native, whatever technology we want, and then we can leverage. So that means we should stop this path, stop trying to make it work as a Skype endpoint? No.
So I guess when we're talking about VTCs in the context of this session, we're talking about endpoints that don't natively support Skype for Business registration. In the case of the endpoints that you mentioned, like Centro,
MediaLine, Centro, we just got a bunch of new equipment.
Those will natively support Skype for Business. There's a separate certification program that we have with Microsoft around that stack, and you don't need to use interop with those endpoints.
So just to make it specific, for example, if you have an HDX, that one is not capable of natively registering for Skype for Business. So if you want to use a Polycom HDX, or of course all of the Cisco and the non-Polycom VTCs, then you would need to use the interop service. However, if you have a group series, which was recently qualified for Skype for Business online, that would register natively. as well as all of the Skype room system devices.
So the interop is for until I didn't replace my old equipment, basically.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
You got it.
Thank you.
Sure.
So just a question about the licensing model for RealConnect. It's a per-user licensing model, but part of the problem is that it's very hard to predict who needs the license in advance. So you have to have the license before you schedule a meeting that includes a room or a VC endpoint. And you don't want to license your entire tenant.
Right. So
let's say you've got 5,000 users.
Yes.
You want to use RealConnect, but maybe your population that actually needs it's about 300 or 500 people, but it's very hard to know who those people are.
Absolutely, and we recognize that, and it's because of that that the user licenses are an extremely low price point, and when you go to certain tiers, the licenses, the cost of the licenses reduce substantially. In fact, if you go to, I think it's 5,000 plus licenses, you just get a site license, so everyone gets one. So we've taken those scenarios into account with the different tiers of licensing and also the costs. Because if you look at concurrency-based licensing, where you basically say, I'm going to have X number of concurrent VTCs across my tenant, those license costs are typically substantially higher than this service. So we've taken that into account.
All right. I mean, it would be awesome if you had the capability to somehow auto-assign the license when someone schedules a meeting and have a kind of a concurrent pool. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, what I'll say to that is just remember that the user licensing here is like, we're talking like a few dollars. We're not talking like thousands of dollars. So I get it. But
there's still a cost difference if you license 500 or you license 5,000. Again, it's just a financial decision that goes on. Yeah.
Right. And again, the tiers come into that because we recognize when you get to a certain number of licenses, we have to reduce the per user licensing cost.
Yeah. Okay.
So don't be discouraged. I know it sounds like it's kind of scary, but it's when you look at it and you drill into it and you compare it to other competitive licensing solutions, it's
maybe another way of talking about it is we didn't want customers to run into a case where they can't have their meetings because they're at concurrency capacity. We wanted customers to have the ability to kind of deploy video interop just make it an afterthought. Then boom, it's deployed. And so the only way to kind of make the financial numbers work out is to basically have it be a very low cost across a broad pool so that you can ensure that everyone has it, but you don't run into that concurrency problem.
Exactly.
So that's why we took the choice to natively integrate the license management into the Office application system. This, by the way, is not something we mentioned during the slide decks, but this is actually kind of innovative in that sense. This is, I believe, the first case of a third-party service being natively managed in the Office license system. And that was something that was very intentional that we wanted to do so that we could really have this be seamless for the users. Once they get licensed, they don't even have to know. The tenant admin, runs a PowerShell, assigns it to 5 or 5,000 users, and then the users, the next day, they schedule a meeting and it's automatically scheduled.
Yeah.
So our objective was to make it just seamless so that it could be, easily used.
I get it. Thank you.
Have you over there?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I've got a question for BlueJeans. Just wondering how your solution is going to work with Teams, if it's going to be offered as a gateway, or if it's just simply going to allow a Teams participant to join a BlueJeans meeting.
So I think I get the question. So how it'll essentially work is, as a Teams user, you would go ahead and schedule your meeting, and if they have the BlueJeans interop license, it would automatically populate the meeting with the room system join information. And so we would actually be the gateway to bring the Cisco, the Life-Size, the Polycom rooms into the Teams meeting platform. And so you could do that through dialing a meeting ID, or you could do it through a one-touch service that we'll also offer.
But is the actual call going to be hosted on Teams or on the BlueJeans platform?
The meeting itself will be hosted on Teams.
On Teams, all right.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's going to be the same with Polycom and Pexip moving forwards?
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the themes about how we will do video interop with Teams is we're going to borrow heavily from what we've launched already with what we internally call Cloud Video Interop, which is the video interop solution Polycom has launched for Skype for Business Online. It will take advantage of the licensing story, so that licenses will be natively managed. That idea of trying to make it seamless and transparent to the end user, you don't have to guess whether you're scheduling a VTC meeting, is key to what we were trying to achieve. And the idea of the gateway mode, so that the Skype for Business endpoints and the VTCs can natively interop with the VTCs being a first-party endpoint in the roster, will also be part of the team solution. The parts that's going to change is really the kind of the protocols between the service and us, because of course Teams has different protocols between it and clients than Skype for Business does, and that's where the SDK comes in.
All right, thank you.
I have a question more about the infrastructure level here. How did you prepare Azure for supporting real-time connectivity here for the video, for interoperability with Polycom? Because as I understand, the gateway is sitting in the Azure, yeah? And the background of this question is because during this week, I've heard several times that Azure is not optimized for the real-time connectivity. And now we see that Polycom gateway is sitting inside the Azure. So was there something special prepared for this?
Well, you can go ahead,
I was just going to say, our new Skype backend is running on Azure. So.
Yeah.
I'm curious for more about those sessions that say it's not optimized for real-time connectivity, because one of the benefits actually in being in Azure is that the connection between the partner solution, Polycom's Real Connect solution today, and the Teams-based solutions that we're talking about for the future, those endpoints have effectively a very high quality network pipe between their service and our Azure-based Teams infrastructure, because it's on the Microsoft backbone. And so our design, actually, one of the design principles from a networking point of view for these solutions was to ensure that the hop from the VTC to the solution provider's service, Polycom, Pexip, or BlueJeans, is as short as possible, so that we could really maximize the use of that Microsoft backbone for highest quality network transmission.
Yeah, from infrastructure perspective, from this, yeah, I fully agree. This is the shortest path, yeah. But as I understand, as I mentioned from other sessions that I've heard, Azure is not prepared for this, or optimized for the real-time connectivity. Maybe some problem with quality of service assigned, maybe different focus put on the application that are running over the Azure, yeah. So that is why I just wanted to know whether you prepare something specially to treat this real-time connectivity for video for Polycom Gateway.
Yeah, so I mean the short answer is yes, we did. I mean our product today is not supported in Azure as like an end user. You can't take our existing VHD files and deploy them in Azure. So we did have to make a lot of changes. We worked very closely with Microsoft, I guess what Doug said is absolutely key. That was a key reason why we chose Azure, to make sure that from a network connectivity perspective, we had the best path, given that all our meetings are Skype and soon to be team meetings. And yes, we work very closely with Microsoft. So it's probably not the same as a regular end user case. Like I said, we don't support people deploying our infrastructure in Azure normally.
Okay, sure. Is there this anywhere documented that we can get?
Documented in which
case?
Yeah,
this connectivity and how it was prepared for Polycom inside the Azure.
I can follow up offline, absolutely, and we can see if we can get something for you. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Sure.
Hi. This is a question for the Polycom team. Do you have it in your roadmap as an option to be able to reuse the same conferencing ID as the PSTN conferencing ID?
Yes, we do. And that's something that we're working on. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry I got it a little bit late, but did you talk a little bit about your one touch to dial solution and for each of the vendor, what that story is like?
I only mentioned that it is something that we'll offer. There is a roadmap around that from a Polycom perspective, and we're working with Microsoft again on some sort of tap for it. It is a hosted version of the service, and if you've deployed our existing solution today, it's a little bit different in a good way. It's more of admin first service, so you've got a dashboard that you can go into where you can configure your endpoints. You don't need anything on premises, or very little on premises. So if you want to follow up after, I can talk about getting you on the tap.
Okay, because right now we're using your workflow server for that.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So that's the existing on-prem solution.
Which works great, by the way, but
yeah.
okay.
Cool.
What about the other participants?
Sure.
Yeah, so for Pexip, there are also multiple options to get one-touch dial through various third-party options, typically talking more natively to the endpoint. So everything we showed today was what was built in to Pexip, but it's also possible to just schedule a VTC room and get the ability to click to join that meeting as well.
Yeah, and on the BlueJeans side, we'll offer one click to dial as well, one touch to dial. And you'll have a couple of different options. You can use the native solution or touch screens or remotes for the one touch to dial that come with the particular vendor of room system that you have, or you can use a tablet that we provide, which gives you basically the BlueJeans touch to dial experience.
All right, thank you. I do have another question, I guess, unless, there's someone, I'll let.
On the same line, so I would like to hear what are the support challenges with multi-vendor here? Because in our situation, Cisco Telepresence is managed by some other company, and then now Polycom or BlueJeans, that come into picture, and Skype is managed by some other company. What are the challenges you see with multi-vendor supporting different video systems?
So I'll take a first stab at that. There's a couple aspects of support. There's the support of who do you call when something goes wrong? That's important. There's how do those players work together to make sure that if it's a multi-part problem, that they can resolve it together. That's another important part. The first part, who do you call? It is the solution vendor. So Polycom, Pexip, or in the future BlueJeans. They're the ones that will be the people that will call if you have a problem scheduling the meeting. There may be some nuances because, joining the meeting. If you're having a problem joining the meeting, you would call the solution provider. If you're having a problem scheduling the meeting, license, then you're probably going to be calling Microsoft. So there is kind of a first level of who do you call. We have, with all of our partners, one of the key processes that's required before a partner can achieve certification is we work together with them on a support flow to make sure that our joint solutions have kind of bidirectional support flow, so that if someone calls company A and it's really company B that needs to resolve, or vice versa, we can route it seamlessly to the others, and they the partners do purchase appropriate support agreements so that they can facilitate that. Also, as it relates to live services, we believe that live service issue resolution is critical, and so we actually, for the live services, the ones where our partner host manages this solution. This does not apply to Pexip because in Pexip case, it's a customer managed or customer deployed. But in the case of Polycom and in the future BlueJeans, we do direct knock-to-knock integration so that we can have DevOps-based support. The third part of that, I'm going to step back and let the partners talk to, is where it's a problem between, say, solution vendor and the VTC provider. And that Microsoft is a little bit more hands-off because that's for more kind of core specialty.
Yeah, before you answer my question, so the beauty about our systems today is I don't have to know who I have to call. On our systems, we have an icon. We just press the button. Somebody will come up live and start helping you right away. So we consider 1 hour of meeting schedule loss is a business loss. So we just want to see how this would play into a bigger picture, having multiple vendors and multiple products together.
So I think sort of in most larger enterprise environments, you would have sort of one point of contact, which would typically be your internal IT or your outsourced IT, which sort of knows who is providing all the different services. At least for our customers, for most large enterprises, they would typically have a lab deployment, a pre-production deployment, so they can try upgrades, make sure it works with all your existing versions and endpoints. Because for all of us as vendors, we provide a list of what are the endpoints we test with. But you might run a newer or an older version versus what we are doing. You might use some different features that we're not testing. So if the environment is very big, it sort of makes sense to spend that extra day on sort of trying a new software release or trying a change in pre-production before going live. And the second part is to set clear demarcation points. So as an example, if you have one provider operating your VTC infrastructure, one provider operating your Skype for Business, and maybe a third provider operating the interop solution, you need to define what is the test case that needs to work from the Skype side, from the VTC side, so when they upgrade, they can also sort of test towards those environments. So it's pretty much as you would run any IT application, I would say.
Thank you. I mean, from a Polycom perspective, we can go a little bit deeper. I mean, we do have Skype deployment services. We're self-certified. Obviously, we support our endpoints. So we can offer a whole services wrap around those types of offers.
We're working with Polycom. Thank you.
Cool. This is probably the last question, I think.
I had another one. That's more for Microsoft, actually. So you talked about exposing the IVR API for Teams for all the third-party people. Is that something you're going to backport for Skype for Business Online as well, so that Pexip, for example, could do IVR dialing?
So right now, the future development we're working on with what I mentioned, we're targeting towards the new Skype backend and Teams at this point.
Yeah, so since it's a Skype backend, is that going to enable IVR dialing for other providers, is my question.
So IVR dialing, I don't think it's something that you get from our SDK. The IVR dialing is something that each of the
right, but they have to be able to resolve that meeting dialing ID into a CPRI, and right now from an on-prem solution that's impossible, right? If we're trying to resolve an Office 365 meeting, except for Polycom because they're in your data centers.
So the solution, the SDKs we are providing for them right now is a bit more customized. At some point down the roadmap, we are looking at providing similar capabilities that other third-party providers can build similar solutions for IVR and recording and things like that. But that's something we're working on towards the future. It's not something that you can take up and use right now.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we're actually over time. So if anybody does have questions, we can take the questions and answers off the podium after we take off our mics. Thanks a lot.